All right, guys. So as you can see, we're just going to be toying around with the playoff machine as I kind of give my thoughts into what's going to happen for the remainder of the year. I'm going to try my hardest not to, ramble about a certain team or a certain division as much as I possibly can. Obviously, there's going to be certain points that need to be made about certain teams, about certain divisions. We'll get into that. I'll try to, not spend, a half hour on a certain team. But basically, I'm just gonna take you through what I expect to happen from now to the end of Week 18, and then that'll kind of open up what I think will be the playoff picture for both conference. So let me hop into this thing. This is the first time I've done screen sharing, so if it stops working, do tell me. That would be very helpful. All right, so I'm gonna just go conference by conference. So we'll start in the AFC and just go kind of game by game, get a little bit of my thoughts on each game, each team, and how I think that they're going to finish the year. Start with Kansas City. I mean, they're the 1 seed right now. They're going to beat Pittsburgh this week, unless some crazy miracle happens where the Chiefs just start looking like they did in the first month of the year. I don't think they're losing to Pittsburgh at home. The Steelers have been starting incredibly slow. If you start slow against Kansas City, that's not great, and they're going to take full advantage of that. Steelers defense has been playing well, which is great. But, the fact that their offense can't seem to do anything until the fourth quarter, even then this past week against Tennessee, the only reason that they won is because their defense had 4 takeaways. They're not going to get 4 takeaways week in and week out. Highly doubtful they do it against Kansas City. The Chiefs should win that game. Let's go to this game, though, because, I said on the last episode of Laces Out with Kurt that the Bills were going to win the AFC East. The Patriots were going to kind of maybe not fall off a cliff so much at the end of the season, but they're not going to, continue this role that they've been on. It's been against subpar competition. I think that the Patriots have been vastly overrated. And what did I say? They were going to lose to the Colts, then they were going to lose to Buffalo. Well, they lost to the Colts. Now they're going to lose to Buffalo, and then the Bills are going to retake the top of the AFC East, and they're not going to look back for the rest of the year. Green Bay and Cleveland. The Browns, I think you could probably put a fork in Cleveland. They've dealt with a lot of, obviously this past week, a lot of things out of their control. Starting Nick Mullins at quarterback. Baker's been hurt all year. They've been dealing with a lot in terms of injuries and COVID and whatnot. That said, I just don't see them battling back in a division where I think that they're right now the weakest team in terms of just how they're playing, how they've looked all year. I just don't believe in Cleveland. I think that they're going to lose on Christmas in Lambeau Field. I mean, that's not a place you want to be this late in the year. Indianapolis and Arizona. The Colts have been on a hell of a roll. The Cardinals, kind of took a step back these past couple weeks, losing to the Rams and Detroit. I don't think they lose 3 straight. I do think that they'll get back on track, which will knock the Colts down a little bit. The Thursday night game, San Francisco and Tennessee. The Titans have been a weird team, have they not? The thing with that is, yes, San Francisco's been playing well. They just beat Atlanta. They beat Cincinnati in overtime. I do think that the 49ers, defensively, the 49ers are better. Tennessee's defense has surprised a lot of people this year. But at home, it's hard to say that Tennessee would lose again. The 49ers are rolling right now. I very much want to pick San Francisco. These Thursday night games tend to be a little bit weird, though. If the Colts lose and the Titans win, then that locks up the division for the Titans because they beat Indianapolis twice. So the Colts, they're going to need a little bit of help. Oh, man, no Derrick Henry. You know what? I'll give it to the 49ers just because they've been on somewhat of a roll, and that'll make things more fun. Tennessee's offense without Derrick Henry, and Julio Jones is hurt again. A.J. Brown. Is A.J. Brown coming back this week? I'll have to look into that. I probably should have done that before the stream. But the 49ers are playing well. The Titans aren't. I think they were a little bit overrated coming into the year, and then dealing with the Derrick Henry injury and everything. I think this just really put them in a little bit of a bind. Bengals and Ravens. I do think that Baltimore kind of gets things back on track this week. I I have my thoughts on Baltimore, which obviously we'll get into throughout the rest of the stream, but I do think that they win against Cincinnati this week. And then looking at the rest of the week, I mean, that the Chargers will beat the Texans. It's not really a marquee matchup, but that'll pretty much do it for the AFC playoff picture, at least. Look around the rest of the league, like we got Denver and Oakland. I'm sorry, Las Vegas. I said Oakland. Denver, to me, like it looks like Drew Lock's going to be starting. Their defense has been playing really well. They're going to Vegas. Vegas just came off a win in which it should have been much more lopsided than it was. It shouldn't have come down to a last-second field goal. I don't believe in Vegas. I think that this is just kind of their identity is starting off fast and just ending abysmally. So I am, even with Drew Lock, like all the weapons that they have offensively, I think that Drew Lock kind of gives them a little bit more offensively. Like I said going into the year that Drew Lock should have been a starter. I just think he gives them a little bit more. And defensively, they're better than Vegas. I think that they'll win. Miami, New Orleans. It's in New Orleans. The Dolphins aren't going to win out. I do think that the Saints will win that, which would put New Orleans in the 7th seed, which again we'll get to the NFC playoff picture after the AFC. So that's the AFC, all the AFC games that mean anything for playoffs for week 16. Now we'll go to week 17. Kansas City and Cincinnati. That game has such huge ramifications, not just for the Chiefs, obviously, because they're trying to lock down that number 1 seed. They're trying to hold off the Chargers. For Cincinnati, if they lose to Baltimore and then lose to Kansas City, that would put them at 8-8 going into week 18. That's not a great place for them to be. I don't think that they're going to beat Kansas City. I think Kansas City's just really in a groove right now, and they're going to find ways to win. So I do think that the Chiefs beat Cincinnati at home. And then we look at Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I have no faith in the Browns. The Steelers beat Cleveland in Cleveland earlier this year. This is Ben Roethlisberger's last home game at Heinz Field. The emotion that's going to be going into that, just the pure want to win, I think is obviously going to be a big factor in this. I think Pittsburgh beats Cleveland again. And then we look above that game is Tennessee and Miami, which is going to have huge ramifications for both teams. Because if the Titans lose that game and the Colts win, both teams would be at 9-7 going into the final week of the regular season. So big ramifications there. I do think that the Titans win that game, though, and they put the division on ice in the AFC South, and all the Colts can really hope for is a wild card berth. I do think that they beat the Raiders, though, which moves them to 9-7. And we look elsewhere, Patriots, Jaguars. The Patriots should beat Jacksonville. And we keep looking at the AFC games. Chargers and Broncos. I think that the Chargers are a better team than Denver, and they'll keep winning. The Bills hosting Atlanta. That's a game that they should win rather handedly. And then the Ravens host the Rams. Who the hell is going to cover Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham and Van Jefferson for 3 hours in Baltimore? They're without their 2 top corners. They have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Without having any, either Marcus Peters or Marlon Humphrey, they're not going to be able to contain Stafford and the Rams. The Rams are going to win that. And then I do believe that does it for all the AFC games that mean anything in terms of the playoff race for week 17, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to take a quick gander here. It does look like that is what is going on. So in terms of that, that's kind of where we sit right now. So after week 17, that's what the AFC playoff picture looks like. And then going into the final week of the regular season, you go to week 18. This is where everything is kind of decided. So Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh is at 8-7-1 at this point. Baltimore 9-7. Pittsburgh beat Baltimore once already. If Pittsburgh wins that game, Ben Roethlisberger's final game in Baltimore, his final regular season game, potentially his last game altogether if they don't win. Baltimore's been very overrated this season. Pittsburgh's defense has been much better than theirs. Not so much against the run, but against the pass, the Steelers have actually been okay. I just don't see the Ravens putting together any sort of offensive game plan to be able to outscore Pittsburgh, just because you look at how successful Lamar Jackson's been against Pittsburgh. He really hasn't. Aside from a game in 2019 where the Ravens almost lost to Duck Hodges in overtime, like Lamar Jackson, even in that game, he threw 3 interceptions. He hasn't had any success against Pittsburgh. So I think that the Steelers win that and ultimately win the AFC North by some grace of miracle of God, where nobody expected that to happen, a month ago. Bills and Jets, the Bills will win that game. I see no reason to bet against the Jets in that situation. Bengals and the Browns, I think the Bengals win that. I think Cleveland loses out. There's just nothing about Cleveland that should give fans reason to, like, they got Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Pitt. Like, none of these games are gimmies for the Browns with how they've played this year. I think the Bengals are a better team, and I think that they beat Cleveland. Tennessee and Houston, the Titans should win that game as well. I don't think they're going to lose to Houston twice. That'll put them at 11-6. Colts and the Jaguars, the Colts should win that game. That'll put them at 10-7, which after a 1-4 start, they rally back and make the playoffs. New England, Miami, I think that, oh man, that's a tough one because, look, both teams, obviously Miami started off incredibly slow and has just been very hot the last, couple months. And then New England, beat a bunch of bad teams in bad situations. Their offense doesn't scare anybody. It really doesn't. Nobody's staying up late thinking, how the hell are we going to stop Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne and Ramondre Stevenson? No one's thinking that. But the fact that, Miami's stout defensively. I mean, they've had their moments this season, especially against Baltimore on Thursday night where they've looked good. Do I really think that the Patriots, lose to the Dolphins in Miami? I don't, although they've had their struggles against the Dolphins, really throughout the past 2 decades, honestly. And if there's anybody that could do it, it would be the Dolphins. I'm kind of talking myself into it. So what the hell? Let's say that the Dolphins will win. What's that going to do? Does that change anything? It does change stuff. All right, fun. So I'll give the win to the Dolphins, just playing off pride by itself, because why not? Go down to the Chargers and the Raiders. I don't think that Vegas is going to be any sort of threat for the rest of the way. They've fallen apart, really. I think that's going to be Derek Carr's last game as a Raider, too. Obviously, I don't know where he's going to go. But I'll give my thoughts on that, once we get further into the offseason. So I think the Chargers win that game, get them to 11-6. Chiefs, Broncos, the Chiefs aren't going to lose to Denver. And then, well, let's see. If the Chiefs I believe that the Chiefs would have first round. Yeah, they'd have the first round on lock regardless. So they might sit some starters, but it's not going to change the playoff picture whatsoever because I don't think Denver is going to do enough to get in. So regardless of what you want to put that at, it doesn't change the playoff picture. And then looking around, I do believe that is all for the AFC. I don't think I'm missing anything. Let me scroll down just to see all the current records that I have everybody at. And yeah, it does look like it. So in terms of how I see the playoffs going in the AFC, that's what I see. I think Kansas City will be the 1 seed. Tennessee will do enough to get to the number 2 seed just because, one, they've beaten Buffalo, which is big, and they have a very weak divisional schedule down the stretch. I don't think they're going to make too much noise in the playoffs, but they'll do enough to get in and get that number 2 seed. Having that win over Buffalo is ginormous for them. So how wildcard weekend will look in the AFC is Tennessee will host New England. They'll likely have Derrick Henry back, which they didn't have, and their loss at home to New England earlier this year. So that'll be a big factor. A nice little rematch for the Titans. I think the Titans win that game. I think regardless of who New England plays, they're a one and done. Buffalo and Indianapolis, what a rematch that's going to be. We're going to have all 3 wildcard games are going to be regular season rematches. Indianapolis obviously marched into Buffalo. Jonathan Taylor scored 800 touchdowns, and the Colts beat Buffalo just a few weeks ago. I think that logic says that the Bills should win that, but I mean, without Tre'Davious White, they let Jonathan Taylor run all over them last time. that's a game that's if you're Bills fans, if you are the Buffalo Bills, you don't want to see Indianapolis again, especially with the role that they've been on. Jonathan Taylor is an MVP candidate. Defensively, they've looked really solid. Like Buffalo doesn't want to see Indianapolis again. I think that's a game that Indianapolis very well could win. And then the Steelers will host the Chargers in a game that the Chargers will win. Los Angeles jumped out to that big first half lead. The Steelers came storming back. They took a late fourth quarter lead, and then, defensive issues for Pittsburgh came to light. And, the Chargers took advantage of it and, took the lead back and didn't give it back and beat Pittsburgh at home. So I do think that the Chargers would win that game in terms of the wild card weekend setup. So that's how I would see it going down in the AFC, at least. Kansas City's going to get the one. Then we'll have Tennessee beat New England. I'll say that Buffalo will beat Indianapolis, and then the Chargers would beat Pittsburgh. That would set up Kansas City, Los Angeles in the wild card round, and then Tennessee, Buffalo in the wild card round, which I think we would get a matchup between Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, which would be in Arrowhead once again, a place that the Bills won earlier this year. Without Tre'Davious White, it's going to be hard because we know that the Chiefs aren't going to run the ball. So that is a game that it could really come down to, all right, who's the healthiest? And right now, I mean, Kansas City, they've been getting hot at the right time. Buffalo's been kind of slowing down. They've been up and down all year. But a rematch between Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, would not be surprised if we saw it. Would not be surprised if Los Angeles did beat Kansas City, though. If there's anybody in there besides Buffalo, I think that could beat the Chiefs, it would be the Chargers, maybe the Colts, but that's if they get past Buffalo, and beating Buffalo and Kansas City in back-to-back weeks. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but I think the likeliest scenario is that we get a Buffalo-Kansas City AFC Championship game rematch. So let me go back to Week 16, and then we'll discuss the NFC. I already have Green Bay beating Cleveland. I already have the Cardinals beating the Colts. Have the 49ers beating the Titans. The Atlanta Falcons are still in this thing somehow, which is astonishing. I do believe that they're still technically in the hunt for a playoff spot because the NFC is so top-heavy and nobody wants to be good in it. So the Falcons, they should beat the Lions. I think that's fair to say. Tampa Bay, I think, will beat Carolina. Tampa Bay's been going through it recently, haven't they? Getting shut out 9-0 by the Saints. What an abysmal game that was. Rams, Vikings. The Rams have been absolutely on fire as of late. Cooper Kupp has been playing really well. You look at everything that they're doing offensively. And Minnesota, yes, they beat the Bears. It was an ugly game. It was a boring game. I do think that the Rams win and continue this little tear that they've been on. Now, this would put, obviously, you saw the playoff picture change just because I picked Rams over Baltimore later on. So don't worry too much about that right now. Cardinals fans will dive more into that. Washington and Dallas. The game a few weeks ago came a little bit more down to the wire than people expected after the first half. Taylor Heineke got sacked by Michael Parsons. They returned it for a touchdown. It was just really a Cowboys defensive show in the first half of that game. Then Dak threw a pick six to Cole Holcomb. Washington got a little bit of momentum. Ultimately, Dallas won. I think Washington is good. I mean, we saw they played last night with Garrett Gilbert, who they just signed Friday against Philadelphia. I think they're good enough to beat Dallas once. I think that they can do that. Dallas has just been so up and down. I think that Washington will get that win and try to stay alive in the wild card race. I have New Orleans beating Miami already. I guess that the Bears and Seahawks, maybe not the Bears anymore, but the Seahawks, I mean, what are they saying? They're 5-9. I mean, we might as well pick Seahawk games just to see if anything crazy happens. But yeah, I don't think the Bears are going to be doing anything, especially after that loss. So I'm just going to stay away from the Bears. Yeah, they'd be 4-11 at that point. They're not getting in. And then the Eagles and the Giants. Apparently, is Daniel Jones going to be playing? I don't think he is. I think he's going to be out. So regardless of who they put, I mean, it's going to be Jake Fromm because Mike Glennon's god awful. Jake Fromm came in and he played well. He played well enough to get a starting to get the start in Week 16 against the Eagles. So I'm not big on Philadelphia. Everybody knows I'm not big on Philadelphia. I'm not big on Jalen Hurts. Their offense is incredibly boring and stagnant. They don't have any big playability. I'm not big on Philadelphia. Defensively, they've been solid. Offensively, they don't do it for me. They're going to do enough to beat the Giants, though. And that should do it for the NFC that week. So that is how the standings would sit at that point. So if the Eagles win this week, then, I mean, they're 8-7. They're looking at a playoff spot. So that's good news for them. So let me get into Week 17. Oh, then the Philadelphia Eagles go to Washington. If Heineke's back, which I expect him to be, I think that Washington gets that win back as well. Like, Washington's been playing so well down the stretch. Like, they're replicating what they did last year, basically. Start off really slow. Alex Smith takes over as the quarterback. Then they just decide to go on a little bit of a tear. They win the division. And then they gave Tampa Bay fits in the wild card round. I think that overall, defensively, they've been playing so much better than they did in the first 6 weeks of the year, which is crazy because they don't have Chase Young right now. So I think Washington's good enough to beat Philadelphia. I don't think that the Eagles are going to beat them twice. They almost didn't with Garrett Gilbert at the helm. So I think that with Heineke, Washington could get a win. The Giants and the Bears, I don't think that that's a game we got to really worry about too much. Texans and 49ers, that's a game that San Francisco should win. But look, that's the thing that worries me the most, is because, like, San Francisco to me just isn't one of those teams that I expect to just roll off wins again. Like, they won 4 in a row earlier this year. This would put them, I think, 3 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row if they beat Houston and Tennessee. So I'm tempted to just take that win away against, I believe I gave them the win. Yeah. I'm tempted to just take that win away from them just because, like, I don't know. Something about San Francisco just doesn't sit right with me. But they should beat Houston. Arizona, Dallas. Arizona is more skilled offensively. Dallas's defense has been kind of boom or bust. Like, Trevon Diggs has 1 billion interceptions, but they also get beat deep a lot. So I think the Cardinals should go into Dallas and win that game. That would put them at 12-4. And then if you look right there, 12-4, both Los Angeles and Arizona. The Cardinals have a better record in division. They split the head-to-head matchup in the division. So Arizona would have the advantage there. And then, like I said, I think the Seahawks would still technically be alive. So I'll give them a win over Detroit. I think Carolina beats the Saints. Like, the Saints are really solid defensively. I don't care because Taysom Hill's the quarterback. Carolina's been solid defensively this year. They've been really good defensively this year at times. If at that point, if Sam Darnold's back, or if PJ Walker, if Matt Rule decides he wants to go with PJ Walker more, Cam Newton isn't doing anything, man. Like, I was rooting for him to do well when he came back to Carolina, and then he proved everything that I had said right about him. It's not good. Not good anymore. Even when he was good, he was pretty overrated. Nothing about Cam is scaring teams right now. That said, the Saints are vastly overrated. Their defense is really good. Their offense is blah. So I'd take Carolina and kind of get somewhat of an upset win over them. But yeah, I think that does it for that week. Oh, nope, I lied. And then Green Bay, Minnesota. I think Green Bay beats the Vikings. The Vikings aren't beating Green Bay twice in a year. So I would take Green Bay to win that game at home in Lambeau, Week 17. Going to be cold. Tampa Bay over the Jets as well. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss any other games. Tampa Bay will beat the Jets. So final week of the year for the NFC. Falcons, Saints. I'm going to give the win to Atlanta because, I mean, they beat them already once this year. Their offense is better. Defensively, like, A.J. Terrell's had a very good year for the Falcons. He's kind of having a quiet year that nobody's talking about, but he's had a very, very productive year. He's been one of the best cornerbacks in football this year. I think Atlanta, they have enough talent offensively to beat the Saints. And the Saints, outside of Alvin Kamara, what do they have? Not a lot. Vikings, Bears. The Vikings will beat the Bears again. Bears are just bad. Nagy will be gone. Ryan Pace should be gone. Washington and the Giants. I have Washington winning out, which would put them at 9-8, which I'm scared of because that seems like a bit of a stretch. But I mean, I like Washington. they've got a lot of really. You look at the receivers. DeAndre Carter's emerged as a really solid number 3 option. Obviously, McLaurin's fantastic. Samuel when he's healthy. Antonio Gibson, very good running back. Needs to cut down on the fumbles a little bit, but he's been really good. And Heineke does enough to get the job done, man. Like he's never going to be elite. He's a capable starter, though. He's proven that over the past, year and a half or a year or so. So, yeah, give me Heineke. Why not? They can beat. They showed that they could beat Dallas. They started off really slow. It's not necessarily Heineke's fault. He was beat up the entirety of the first half, and it kind of got away from him. But yeah, they're better than the Giants. I think overall, when healthy, they're better than the Eagles. So they can win. They can win at least 2 of 3. I have them winning out, which scares me, but we'll go with it. Dallas and Philadelphia, the Cowboys will win that game and lock up the NFC East. Tampa Bay and Carolina, the Buccaneers will win that, get to 13-4 on the year. Look at Arizona, Seattle. The Rams are going to be rooting hard for the Seahawks. And does Russell Wilson get, a much-needed victory to send to at least go out on a high note if this is his last year with Seattle? I like to think he does. So that win, and if the Rams beat the 49ers, which I think they do, that would put the Rams at the 2 seed at 13-4. And then we look at who Green Bay's playing. They're playing Detroit. We're going to have 3 13-4 teams in the NFC at that point. And then I do believe that is all. That is all the games that we need to cover. And so that's what the playoff picture in the NFC would look like. So we got 2 13-4 teams with the Rams and the Buccaneers at the 2 and 3. Green Bay at the 1 going 14-3. Dallas at the 4 going 11-6. Arizona slides down to 12-5 at the 5 seed. 49ers get in at 10-7. Washington at 9-8. So let's look at the overall standings. So if you look at that right column in each division box, that's the projected records of each team. So Buffalo, I think, will go 11-6. I think that New England will come back down to earth a little bit. They'll go 10-7. They'll still be a playoff team in the AFC, obviously. Let me scroll up a little bit just so you can see every team and the playoff picture. AFC East, AFC West. Kansas City will win that. I just don't see them losing again. The Chargers, 11-6. They were my, dark horse coming into the season, and they're playing fantastic. Denver, they'll give it a run for their money. They just don't have enough skill offensively at the quarterback position to get it done. Vegas, they're falling apart. They're going to lose out. They're 7-7 right now. I think they're going to go 7-10. Pittsburgh, I think they win 2 of 3. They're going to lose it in Arrowhead this Sunday. I think they're going to beat Cleveland. They're going to beat Baltimore and win the division at 9-7-1. Cincinnati, they're going to come so agonizingly close, but they have a pretty rough rest of the way. Like Baltimore isn't a gimme. They're not going to beat the Chiefs. They'll beat the Browns, but going 1-2 down this stretch isn't going to get them in, unfortunately, just because the AFC is very, very competitive right now. Baltimore will go 9-8. I think that they relied far too much on being able to come back and win games this year. Like they did it 5 times. That's not a sustainable way to win. Their pass defense is bad. They've got Green Bay and the Rams. I don't think they're winning either of those games. The one game that I see them winning is against Cincinnati. And even then, that's not a game. They could very well go 8-9. And then Cleveland, I think they're going to lose out. They're just too decimated. Baker, even when he's in the game, he's just absolutely, not himself right now. He's playing at 50% at best. I think Cleveland loses out and goes 7-10. In the AFC South, Tennessee, they'll win 2 more games. Like I don't believe in Tennessee that much. I think that they're going to beat New England in the wild card round, but then they're going to get beat in the divisional round. But they're going to do enough to win the division. Beating Indianapolis twice definitely helps that. The Colts, they're going to continue this incredible run that they've gone on since starting 1-4, finish off 10-7 to get the 6th seed. Houston, they're bad. So is Jacksonville. And we don't need to really spend too much time on that. So that's the AFC playoff picture. Dallas currently sits at 10-4. I think they'll finish off at 11-6. So, they'll go 1-2 down the stretch, but they're still going to win the division. And then, Washington, they're 6-8 right now. I think they're going to win out and get that 7 seed. Philadelphia goes 8-9. I just don't believe in Philadelphia. I don't believe in Jalen Hurts. But you look at the NFC West, obviously it's incredibly stacked. I have Seattle winning out. How about that? Still missing out, going 8-9. But yeah, the Rams, I think right now they remind me a lot of Tampa Bay last year, where they got into a funk in November. They won a big game, and that kind of parlayed them into a lot of success down the stretch. So I think the Rams will win the division. Arizona will go 12-5 and be in that wild card spot and face Dallas. San Francisco will go 10-7 and be that 6th seed. Green Bay's fantastic. They'll win out. They'll go 14-3. Minnesota will come up just shy, going 8-9. Chicago and Detroit, no one really cares about right now, especially in the playoff conversation. And the Tampa Bay, yeah, they're going to also win out, go 13-4. They've been in a little bit of a funk recently. You know, the loss to the Saints on Sunday night was ugly. It was horrible to watch. Very boring game. Atlanta, 8-9. They're going to make a run for it. Now, if Washington loses one of these in this scenario, let's just say that Washington loses to the Giants on a win. That would put in still the Washington football team and a tiebreaker somehow. So if things go the way I think that they're going to go for teams like Minnesota, Atlanta, other teams that are 8-9, Philadelphia, even if Washington were to go 2-1 in this stretch, if they beat the Eagles and they beat Dallas, that gives them a very good division record, which helps them out even if they go 8-9. That helps them in these tiebreaker situations. So if Washington wins in weeks 16 and 17, they're basically a guarantee to get in almost at that point. I mean, you look at other teams that are going 8-9 that I have the Falcons going 8-9, but I have them winning in week 18. So they'd be going into that game 7-9, as would Minnesota. So they would pretty much have that final spot on lock if they win these next 2 weeks. So big implications for Washington in that sense. So, I mean, Minnesota would need to pull off a win in Lambeau, or who else do they play? Week 16, they play the Rams. So they've got the Rams at home in this coming week, and then they go to Lambeau Field week 17. Then they got the Bears week 18. They should win that game. But if they go 1-2 down the stretch, that's pretty much all she wrote for Mike Zimmer. So yeah, that is how I see things shaping out in either conference. Now I went game by game, I guess, through the AFC. I'll do that for the NFC. The Rams will beat Washington. They're just too high-powered. So the Rams will beat Washington. The Buccaneers will beat San Francisco. I think the Cardinals will beat Dallas. I just think that they're more skilled on both sides of the ball. So that would set up the lowest remaining seed being Arizona going to Lambeau Field and facing the Green Bay Packers. That's a good look. If Arizona goes into Lambeau and defeats Green Bay and the Packers are one and done in the playoffs, it's pretty expected that Aaron Rodgers won't be there next year. That would all but guarantee that he's gone. If you go 14-3 and you don't win a playoff game, that would pretty much sign Aaron Rodgers' way out of Green Bay. I think the Packers do win, though. You know, they're getting Bakhtiari back. They're getting Alexander back. They're getting Smith back. I think that Arizona's another year away from going on a good playoff run. We've seen this progression in steps. Last year, they came very close to being a playoff team. If Kyler Murray doesn't get hurt, they probably are a playoff team. This year, they continue to grow off that, to build off that foundation. They were the last undefeated team in football. I think they'll get into the playoffs. They'll put up a good fight against Green Bay. That's not going to be a blowout. It'll come down to the wire. But I don't think that they quite get there yet. They'll win a playoff game this year. And then in 2022, I think that's where we could see them make a run to the NFC Championship game. And then we'll get Los Angeles and Tampa Bay in the other divisional game. That game would be in Los Angeles. This is a game that the Rams already won earlier in the season. Would they be able to do it again? I would like to think so. I really would. So I would give that win to the Rams, mostly because I love Matthew Stafford, and I would love to see Matthew Stafford make, another trip to Lambeau as he did for, 11 years as a member of the Detroit Lions. And then we would get Rams-Packers in the NFC Championship game. That would be a very fun little excursion, and I would enjoy. I would love to see it. So my 2 championship games would be Kansas City and Buffalo, Green Bay, and Los Angeles. I would like to see, the selfish person in me would love to see Patrick Mahomes against Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl, considering we never got Brady and Rodgers. Almost did, but did not. So, yeah, I would be very okay to get, even if it's Josh Allen against Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl, that would be fun. I mean, both teams are both very good, obviously. If we get Chiefs, Rams, that's fine. If we get Josh Allen against Aaron Rodgers, that's great too. Like, there's no combination of games between those 4 teams that I wouldn't want to see. So, Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC, Green Bay and the Rams in the NFC, and that's how I see things shaping out in these playoff races that are heating up. So that is where we'll leave that. You can leave a comment. You can tweet at me at JBaileyNFL. So however you're watching, whether it's on Twitter or YouTube, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me do this. Let me actually remove this real quick, and I'll bring myself full screen. There we go. Look at my hair. It's so messy. So yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, oh my goodness, it's so bright. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a subscribe. It's my birthday. That would be a nice little present for me. So subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. That would be rad as well. And yeah, we're gonna, as we get further and further down the stretch here, be putting out more and more content, which we're excited about. Now, go read my stuff on Fansided, fansided.com/JaredBailey. Other things on Fansided, Stacking the Box, Matt Lombardo Show, ton of stuff from a ton of talented people. They're doing really awesome things. Matt and Max just sat down with Juju Smith-Schuster. I think it was last week or the week before. Go watch that. So yeah, ton of great stuff on Fansided from everybody. Go check it out. Go check out my stuff. I just released hardest hitters of all time and most overrated players from every team. Most underrated player from every team will be coming out here soon. So yeah, that's all of my stuff. That's where you can find all of it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, subscribe, like it. If you're watching on YouTube, that helps me out a little bit. It's a new channel, trying to build it. So yeah, regardless, appreciate y'all watching, however you're watching. Follow me on Twitter. Keep up with me. And we'll do more of this soon, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. I think once we get into week 16, however I predict things, I think that's where we kind of got to hammer it in. So that's what I'll do. But yeah, more content to come, by all means, here in the next few weeks. Excited for it. Appreciate y'all watching. Means a lot to me. Talk to you soon.